what up, everyone? Today, since you know that there is this little new silhouette event going on about the new collaboration, well, it's not new, it's already out in Korea, so it's just coming to global now, presumably on Thursday. I will be reviewing all of the new units that will come out with the collab. I'm assuming that we will be able to summon them as well. At least summon them in banners, since Korea does have banners for all 3.5s from the collab. So I'm not gonna be giving opinions on whether it's worth summoning or not, because we don't even have info that the banners will be available guaranteed. It's just my speculation that they will be, based on both what the Korea is getting as well as the previous events that happened with new Net 5 releases. Today I'm more of gonna discuss the skills of all 4 new units, and yes, there are 4, not 3 units. Seeing where they excel, what they can do, and maybe which areas you can use them at, and hopefully this allows you to see the skills a little bit into the future and decide whether you want to maybe use your scrolls on the Wind Monkey banner or any other summons that you are holding on. So yeah, first of all, first 3 units will be Nat 5s, and the last one will be a light Nat 4, which will be most likely available from the event that's coming with the collab. So for the fire Nat 5, it's gonna be this guy called oh my god, I will definitely butcher these names, but Hayeo no Kim or something like that. So for his skills, his first skill doesn't have anything special, a little bit higher multiplier than the rest of them. His second skill leaps to the enemy target and strikes down to deal damage that penetrates defense and deals bonus damage to nearby enemies excluding the enemy target. Applies attack up to himself before dealing damage if the target is a monster. So that attack up is only working if the enemy is a monster, so you will not be getting the attack up if you are attacking summoners, which is a little bit of a shame, but it should still apply in a lot of cases. The third skill is attacks the enemies within the area, so AoE attack, and removes 2 beneficial effects on them, deals bonus damage based on the number of beneficial effects removed from each target, and grants invincibility to himself. So damage increases by 174% for each beneficial effect. I believe that is individual for each unit, so you will not be able to stack like 10 of these buffs if you hit a lot of units and do that amount of damage to everyone. I think it's just if you remove 2 from one, he will get 350% boost. If you removed 1 buff from another, he will only get a 175% higher damage, so stuff like that. And if he removes beneficial effects, he will get invincibility for 7 seconds. And then to finish off, his passive is if beneficial effect is stolen or removed from him, he receives level 3 attack up and level 3 crit rate up for 7 seconds at max skills. So if these steals are coming continuously, he will be able to keep those buffs for around a little bit more than half of the total fight. So yeah, first of all, this unit of course is mostly PvP. PvE units, I'd say they would need a little bit more either debuffs or damage to be considered good in PvE. With this guy, I'm not seeing him being that useful. His whole shtick is by being able to buff himself a lot, which is mostly used in PvP, and in PvE you already have a lot of buffs. Of course, it depends on the content you're doing. It might be a little bit more useful for the dungeons that you are doing solo, but for stuff like raids or guild battles, you will have plenty of attack buffs, you will have plenty of crit rate buffs, and the self buffs that he gets is definitely not that important. I think it's more of a being able to self buff when you have a very limited amount of units. So when you're fighting solo or when you're fighting PvP 1v1s, this is where he will mostly excel in, especially since he can remove beneficial effects, which will be super OP against a lot of PvP fights. So yeah, overall, this guy is pretty decent for PvP, especially if you're dealing with buffs, as well as you do have buffs on yourself, because the passive will only activate if your buffs has been stripped. So you will either need to get buffs yourself via your second or third skill, or have an additional buffer coming from either your summoner or other units. For summoner, it shouldn't be too difficult to get those buffs. For example, with Kina, you can get buffs with pretty much any of her elements. For Cleave, I believe you can get like a defense buff from his wind element or something like that. I'm not sure if Orbia gives any buffs to her allies, but yeah, getting buffs definitely shouldn't be an issue in my opinion. So he will be pretty decent attacker in PvP, but definitely nothing too special in PvE wise. And now let's go to the Warden at 5, and her name is Nadin Ha. As you can see, the silhouettes here will be matching the ones we've received in the little teasers. I think this was the very first one with those little horns visible from her shoulder. I think the other silhouette will be the wind one, which we'll discuss in a second. So yeah, her skills, her first skill is regular, just like any other 165% multiplier unit. Her second skill is, let's see the max level, attacks enemies within the area, so again AoE attack, and applies block beneficial effect and frostbite to random enemy target within the area. So she will be giving block beneficial effects for 20 seconds, which in my opinion is really strong in PvP, especially against some heavy buffer teams that do not have any cleanse. The third skill is attacks the enemy target 3 times with damage based on the number of harmful effects on the target, and applies defense down per hit if the target has block beneficial effects or frostbite. So if the enemy has block beneficial effects, you will be giving defense break for 20 seconds. This means to make the most use of her, you will need to combo her second skill into her third skill, which instantly means that she will be having a hard time being used in not a soul link slot, because if she uses her third skill followed by second skill, her whole combo is sort of dead for like 20 seconds until the cooldown refreshes. So if you do plan on using her, keep in mind that you will need to use her in a soul link slot to make the combo work. But yeah, for the skills themselves, actually let's just check the passive first. Yeah, her passive is just additional stats. So if she's attacking a fire unit, she will get a damage dealt boost. This is not an effect, this is a straight up damage boost, so you will not get those damage taken up beneficial effects. And she also gets some accuracy. So just based on this passive, you can already see she's mostly meant to counter any fire threats that you see. So while she will be pretty decent into fire heavy teams, the rest of her skills I'm actually not a big fan of. I'm not even reviewing the ultimate because it's very similar to the rest of the skills combined. So I'm mostly looking at what you will be using from the first two skills as well as the passives, as ultimates are very rarely used and you rarely get to use ultimates in PvP overall, since the battles are usually over pretty quickly. But yeah, the combo you needed worries me a bit. What I don't like about her third skill is that it's only single target. I would say if it was an AoE attack, having the ability to block beneficial effects on everyone and defense break everyone on top of that would have been definitely a good use case for her. But right now, the defense break is only single target, which I'm not a big fan of. She also technically doesn't have a passive if you are not fighting fire heavy teams, so there's that. Basically, if you're not seeing too many fire units, you can essentially imagine that she does not have a passive in the fight. So yeah, while her second skill is good in my opinion for that AoE block beneficial effects, I am really not liking her third skill because it's just single target, and in a lot of cases in PvP you will not even be able to get your units to focus on the unit that was defense broken unless you bring the units of the same type into the fight, so they could focus the same target. So yeah, not a huge fan of this unit. Definitely for PvP wise, the fire guy was way better. For PvE, while she does have a single target ability, I don't think her second ability does much in PvP. Like, block beneficial effects isn't that important in a lot of PvE scenarios, like, unless you're finding some very specific bosses. But even then, for bosses that could use those block beneficial effects, like the Forgotten Earth Shrine, like the little fire stone boss, he does cleanse or rather harmful effects, so that second skill, even if you blocked the effects, he will simply cleanse it and still buff up attack up and defense buff. So really not a big fan of using her in PvE either. And for the third unit, it's the Windnet 5, and her name is meee. Yeah, definitely butchered that. Her first skill also a little bit higher multiplier, but no other effects on top of it. Her second skill is rushes head on and throws a powerful punch to deal damage based on her max HP to enemies within the area and applies defense down with a certain chance. Removes 2 beneficial effects on the target when she successfully applies defense down. And before discussing, I'll review the rest of her skills real quickly. Yeah, third skill is takes 3 steps forward with a burst of energy to deal damage based on her max HP to nearby enemies, and applies defense up and damage dealt up to herself per hit. This means per hit, so since she hits 3 hits, I believe, or is it not? Wait, takes 3 steps. No, actually I think it's only 1 hit. The description is a bit unclear. I'm not sure whether 3 steps is considered 3 separate hits or is just a single hit. I will treat it in the worst case scenario that it's a single hit, but there is a chance that it's 3 hits actually. So yeah, she applies defense up and damage taken up to herself. Damage dealt up rather, not taken up. And her passive is she gets additional buffs depending on the element she's attacking. So if the target is fire, meaning that she will have a hard time critting on it, she will get damage dealt up 30%. This is not a beneficial effect again, just a straight up damage boost. If the target is water attribute, she will receive 30% less damage from them. And when an enemy is defeated, she will get a self buff of 14 seconds of attack level 1. So the good thing about this, first of all, I'm talking about the passive. If the target is fire, I don't see much use for this, especially if she does not have self-sustain. You can sort of make her self-sustain with vampire runes, in which case she could be considered pretty decent, and I think vampire runes will definitely be one of the best choices here. If the target is water attribute, this one I'm already seeing being very good in sort of these 1v1, 1v2 leftover situations, because if she is fighting a water unit, being wind unit herself, she already has an advantage, but with this passive you're getting that much more rather damage received being lowered, and just increasing your chances to win the 1v1 way higher. When the enemy is defeated, she gets attack buff, and this is a continuous effect, meaning that whenever she defeats, no matter the cooldown, she will get that attack up. So it will be a little harder to activate in PvP, but for stuff like PvE, and for example, I don't think you will summon units just for farming, but she will be decent to farm rather various scenario units, I suppose. Now, going back to her second skill, yeah, so she applies defense down, and after applying defense down, she strips the beneficial effects, which is, I really have a problem with this skill because it's the wrong way around. And if you are dealing with stuff like immunity or high resistance, there is a very high chance that you will not even be able to strip it, because if you do not apply the defense down, you will not be able to strip the buffs to follow up, meaning that if you are bringing her into a team of immunity or very high resistance, you can pretty much forget about a chance to even remove those beneficial effects, which sort of sucks because she would have been a very decent unit if she could strip into defense wave, but that would probably also be very OP. So yeah, not a huge fan of her second skill. For her third skill, she can get defense up and damage dealt up after using the attack, so sort of also a self buffer, but this time her damage based on max HP, so you can build her tanky and still life leech a lot if you use her with vampire runes, and I think vampire runes is the main use for her. So yeah, as a unit overall, I'm not seeing much use for her in PvP because of the second skill being the wrong order, and overall the skills not being too impactful for PvP. For example, whole team wise, is just a single unit that buffs up himself, and even those buffs are pretty much defense up, which is in a lot of cases only useful if you are using her with vampire runes and stuff. So yeah, not a huge fan of it. So far, I feel like the fire one has been the best. I would say the water one is the second best, but the water and the wind ones are very sort of similar in terms of usability because I'm not a big fan of both of them. Oh yeah, for reference, this is her ultimate, but I'm not reviewing ultimates because they do not have much impact in a lot of cases, but yeah, it's similar to the second and third skill combined. And now the fourth unit, which is actually a light nat 4, and it should be available to everyone because it comes from an event. I think the event is related to Trial of Ascension, so the unit is called AV. I'm not sure what that references to. So yeah, her third skill, nothing special, just a little bit higher multiplier. Her second skill is applies attack down and crit down to nearby enemies. So an AoE debuff, which could be useful in a lot of both PvP and PvE scenarios, assuming that you are fighting someone that does not have immunity or cleanse or simply has those removed at the time of applying this skill. Her third skill applies defense up to nearby allies and recovers their HP. The recovery amount is based on the target's max HP. So she heals for 28% of the target's HP. This means that she does not heal on her HP, and regardless of how much HP you will have, you will only heal a fixed amount of 28% HP. Similar to Tion, since for Konamiya, for example, the healing is based on her max HP, but for Tion, it's based on the unit's max HP, so you can bring Tion without any runes and he will still heal the same amount as if he was built on full HP. And her passive is when a team member, excluding yourself, is attacked by a boss, she will use her third skill, meaning her heal, once, and that has a cooldown of 18 seconds. So yeah, basically, overall, she's sort of a PvE only unit, it seems, because her passive will only work on bosses, so you can expect her to be used in bosses mostly. Her third skill is a decent heal. I especially like the defense buff on top of it because it will help you deal with those harder PvE dungeons in general, just compared to what a healer only would be able to do. And her second skill also allows you to debuff that boss, meaning that if you do have attack down, crit rate down on the boss, and defense buff on yourself, as well as healing coming constantly, you definitely won't have much trouble beating harder bosses. And I can even see this being used in some cases for Galagos, because the attacks are AoE, meaning they can debuff a lot of units overall. I'm actually considering building her for Galagos just to test it out if she will help me in those higher floors like the floor 3 boss. But yeah, there are several ways to use her because she has a passive that basically activates her third skill. You do have the ability to use her as a soul linked unit and set her to use the second skill exclusively, meaning that you will be debuffing the boss a lot, as well as constantly healing from her passive, because of course, if you are fighting a boss unit, he will be attacking you constantly, and every 18 seconds she will be cycling that heal and defense buff, allowing you to basically nullify any damage that the boss deals, because both attack debuff and the crit rate debuff already lower their damage by a lot. If you apply defense buff on top of that, yeah, the damage just drops significantly. So in most cases she will be used in PvE, however you can try to use her in PvP. Just keep in mind that if you do use her in PvP, she's essentially not running any passive on her, because you will not be fighting any boss units in PvP. But yeah, overall, I think I'm a big fan of her, because the sort of full support unit is something I'm really missing on Cleave, and the use cases I have for Cleave at least. But I'm not sure how she will cope with other summoners, but I do see her being useful in a lot of PvE cases, not so much PvP. Although she would seem good to be in PvP, but I'm just not a fan of her passive not working at all. So yeah, overall I do like the light unit. I kind of like the fire unit, although I'm not a big fan of self buffers, because I do like to bring a team that buffs all units. Not a big fan of the water and the wind one, but perhaps you will find some use for them. I'm speaking sort of from my perspective and my thoughts on whether I would summon them or not. And for the elemental trees, personally I will not be summoning any of them. Especially if they require 200 mystical stones to be summoned from a banner. I will most likely test the light one, because I kind of like her skills for a lot of bosses. And yeah, other than that, I hope this sheds some light on the skills that they have, and I'll see you soon, hopefully.